other big stories, obviously, California, we've talked about that. Schiff got protested twice. It's a big loss to both lose Porter and Lee in the House and to not have them in the primary because they need to step down because of California law. But in that Orange County district, running to replace Katie Porter, talk about this AIPAC dynamic, because AIPAC is going to be the big story in a lot of these primaries. They dumped like something like $4 or $5 million into that race. You wrote a piece about it.
Probably end up being 5 million. Yeah.
Wondering why. I mean, I think they do stuff to set an example in many respects. And I suspect they chose this one because even though Andy Min didn't necessarily show that he was, Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib about this, they want to like set an example. We'll come after you if we even get a whiff that you could potentially be, in some way, a dissenting view on Israel. But he still won.
He still won. It hasn't been called yet.
Dave Min, sorry, I said Andy. Yeah, apologies.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, but I was in the district a week ago, really, with Min and with Joanna Weiss, and yeah, Min said to me, I'm not entirely sure why they did this. I asked him, what would you say to AIPAC? I said, my first question, why'd you do this? The backstory, as I know it, is that yes, Min did not call for a ceasefire. No one did. Min's position on the war is basically identical to the Biden position of 2 weeks ago. So I would say he might be even talking less about the need for a ceasefire than Biden is right now. But candidates have questionnaires, they have policy papers and position papers, and AIPAC asked for them, DMFI asked for them, J Street asked for them. My impression is that what Min said about his Israel positions did not check every box for AIPAC, and that worried them. And that is how they prefer to operate, is by saying you need to be loyal on these sets of issues. You need to be completely trustworthy. You're not going to bend on Israel if you get this kind of pressure. So he was not there endorsing BDS or anything, or putting up a Leila Khaled monument or something. He just wasn't as adamant that he was going to support Israel in every decision that the current government made. And based on their lack of confidence, they said, well, we have a candidate who is. And they went all in. They also had in that district, Emily's list was supporting Joanna Weiss. So they had a credible Democratic candidate who agreed with them 100% and also had a different story to tell. Also, Min was vulnerable on the fact that he got a DUI during the campaign, which he was telling me. The fact that they spent $5 million mostly on that attack, he thinks maybe inoculated him. He's apologized many, many times for it. He quit drinking after it. Voters have been forgiving of some things, not of others. But his thought was that, yeah, this was crazy that they were doing this, but it might help him. But the reason AIPAC, etc., targeted him is that he was there on 90% of things, not 100%, and they didn't like that he was. He's also, talking to him, he's a very confident guy. He doesn't genuflect. He might have come off as the sort of person who could be independent-minded at some point down the line. And they don't want that.
Okay, here's the most important part of this, though. How many losses does AIPAC have until their ability to raise this kind of money? When you've got $100 million, to drop $5 million in one of these races because the person's a little bit iffy, you're doing that so that you don't, in part, so that there are other races in the future that you don't have to drop money into because you are disciplining lawmakers in that way. But the question becomes, when they start losing some of these races where they put $5 million in, I'm thinking, Summer Lee in the last cycle, but if there are 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 Dave Mins out there where they lose, their ability to go back to their funders and say, hey, we need to do this is going to be diminished because people are going to lose faith in them. Do you have a sense of what that figure is and, where the other big races for AIPAC are going to be?
Well, yeah, and you mentioned Summer Lee. She lost. They lost to her last cycle twice. They lost in the primary, lost in the general, and she's still being targeted this year. She's actually, she backed out of a care event, in part because of pressure from AIPAC and from local Jewish leaders saying that they were worried their congressman was embracing people who'd said crazy things about October 7th. So when I talk to, and you talk to the same folks, when I talk to activists on the other side of this, they just assume there will be a cornucopia of money that never stops. That there's never going to be a point where AIPAC, DMFI, et cetera, say, oh, we're tapped out and we look kind of embarrassed because of this one loss. This cycle, they're not saying they're going to beat everyone who has called for a ceasefire. Taking out one or two members of Congress and Jamal Bowman in New York and Cori Bush in Missouri look like the most vulnerable for, again, external reasons. These are both people who have had, in Bowman's case, the fire alarm story. In Bush's case, spending money on their family and security. These are stories that have hurt them locally, kind of like what happened with Dave Mint. So they look for the member that is beatable for other reasons. With a credible candidate in the district. They've got that in New York too. It's debatable if they have that with Summer Lee. I don't think that if their win record is 3 for 100, that's still 3 people that they took out. I mean, the Justice Democrat, I'm not making a one-to-one comparison, obviously, but Justice Democrats lost most of its races in 2018, but it elected four squad members, and it beat Joe Crowley and it beat Mike Capuano. You don't need to have that many shots connect. And so I've not detected, and talking to Mark Melman at DMFI and the people over in this orbit, they're not worried if they put money in a race and lose, that people know, look how much money we can burn on a race without winning. It doesn't mean we're going to stop. You cannot stop this strategy. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't think they are actually looking at their budget and looking at their win-loss record. Will we notice a win-loss record? Certainly. But if you're a member of Congress, just in a vacuum, would you prefer to have $5 million spent against you or not have $5 million spent against you? You prefer to not have it at all. And just the threat of it remains really potent, even if they don't win everything.
On some level, losing and then being able to continue to spend is almost more terrifying than winning in a couple instances, I guess. But